what's going on, y'all? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And you're about to watch a little OTB LSU.
We're going to give you all the latest, greatest between LSU football, baseball, women's basketball, softball, and everything in between.
Bottom line, if you want to talk Tigers, keep it locked, subscribe, like it, and we hope you enjoy it. I want to look at I put together my top 5 most important matchups for the game on Sunday. Position group, player versus player, however you want to put it. Top 5 best matchups come Sunday, LSU, FSU. And Jake, you can give me your own 5 or you agree, disagree. My number 1 most important matchup for Sunday is LSU's offensive line against Florida State's defensive line. And the reason being is I don't think, maybe outside of just Harold Perkins himself, I don't think you're going to see a bigger difference between the 2 years than in how good LSU's O-line should be this year compared to how putrid they were in this game last year. And if you're looking at Jaden Daniels as being the key, him taking that leap as being the key, keeping up with Jordan Travis, maybe keeping up with an offense for Florida State that should put up points, well, LSU's offensive line is going to be the key to accomplishing all of these goals. So that's my number 1 most important matchup for Sunday, Jake. LSU line against FSU D-line.
It's hard to go away from that one. It's just when you look at who they have on the defensive front and the players that they have and the potential Sunday players that they have, and then not only the Sunday players that you have, but also, and yeah, I know the game's on Sunday night, but I'm talking pros here.
Oh, okay.
And so when you look at the growth of the players that you have, like Will Campbell last year, we talked about it 2 weeks ago. He was the worst graded offensive lineman in this matchup last year. He's 18 years old. He's a true freshman going against a potential first-round pick, and so that's no surprise. Think about the growth that he's had. Think about the wholesale changes that you had on your offensive line after this game.
Yeah.
The next game against Southern, completely different offensive line. Emory Jones and Dellinger goes from center. Charles Turner comes in. It's a much better unit than what faced Florida State a year ago. Now, it's still a very good Florida State defensive line, but I think you've made such vast improvements that is going to be a positive for you. I actually still like this LSU offensive line, even against a really good Florida State defensive front.
So that's where it gets interesting maybe between my number 1 and number 2 here, Jake, is I think the LSU offensive line is the most important for everything we just mentioned, but I feel very good about them. Like, I think they will play very well, and I think they will do their job. My second more important matchup is the complete opposite, where it's my biggest concern of the day, and that is LSU's defensive backs against that FSU. I said wide receivers, but really just core, right? Weapon core. Extended to Jaheim Bell and Travis Benson as well. That's a running back and tight end. Yeah, I just we've talked about it a lot, so I don't know how much more in depth we have to go here. But simply LSU's DBs are the biggest question mark on the roster, and they're going against what should be one of the top grouping of weapons, along with one of the better quarterbacks in the entire country.
It might be number 1 for me. As much as I like your number 1, I probably would slide LSU's DBs versus Florida State's receivers as the most important matchup. Like Johnny Wilson is somebody that is going to be difficult. He's a guy that averages 21 yards per catch, incredibly long. He has a tendency, he will drop the football. His hands are not the best, but he is 6'7", 237 pounds. I mean,
and fast.
He is a matchup nightmare. Like you last year, you had big corners.
Yeah.
Bernard Converse, like not even height, but just big physical. Like he looked like a safety.
He did.
Gardner had the length. Who's going to be that guy this year for you? Like Zy Alexander has it, but he's stepping up from Southeastern to now playing against Florida State. He's maybe the most important player for LSU in this game. Think about that. There's other players that are better, certainly. But as far as importance, it might be Zy Alexander against Johnny Wilson.
Oof, man, and what an ask for Zy Alexander. Where'd he come over from? Southeastern?
Southeastern.
McNeese? Okay, yeah. Southeastern, right? In game 1, it's like, hey, go take on 6'7" Johnny Wilson and Jordan Travis. Okay, we're going to learn today. We're going to learn today. I like Emil. That's true. I like Emil's here. He says, 1, LSU's DBs against the receivers. 2, LSU's defense versus Jordan Travis on third downs. Remember, I forgot about that.
God,
11 of 17 last year. First half was like pretty much 100%. They got
like
it together
9 of
second
10
half.
or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, but that's a great call by Emil. And then he says 3, Trey Brinson versus LSU's defensive front without Mason Smith. Not a bad 3 there. Remember, Benson put together the largest forced miss tackle number that PFF has seen in a decade. Okay, so we talked about O-line versus D-line, DBs versus wide receivers. My number 3 is LSU's pass rush against Florida's offensive line, Florida State. And obviously that's because it really ties into Jake's number 1, my number 2, right? The better the pass rush, the more it helps out a secondary that looks to be the weakest matchup on the field. So that's pretty easy to explain there. And also, I don't know who's going to do the pass rush. Right?
I was about to say, I need to know who is going to be the edge rusher for LSU. I know the candidates, but I need to know who's going to be the dude. And if you have a dude, if you don't, if you just have a guy, then that's a problem. Because then you have to start changing things around. And I'm looking because I thought this was the case. Phil Steele has Florida State as the number 3 overall offensive line in the country.
Yeah.
They're a unit that has been together for a long time. They've played well together, veteran unit, Sunday players on that unit. I still feel good about the interior. I know Mason Smith's out of this game, but you still have Wingo and Jefferson and Lee and Guillory, guys that you have seen play in college football, okay? And you've seen play at a high level. And Savion Jones is somebody that we have seen in flashes. Now he's going to be counted on. Now he's not going to be that edge rusher like B.J. Ojulari. He's going to be more the Ali Gay kind of defensive end in this defense. But, you got it. Because the last thing that you want to do is you're not getting rush, and then you panic a little bit, and you're like, hey, we're going to move Harold Perkins back to the edge.
Yeah.
Right? Because you could have that ability. Because you could just say, hey, Omar Spates, Greg Penn, you're in the middle. Harold, you're back on the edge.
Well, it could be in the game plan too, anyway, on third downs and stuff.
It could be. It most certainly is going to be in the game plan, but you don't want to have it be the game plan.
Yeah.
Because I'm not even saying it's a bad one, but you've talked all offseason about not wanting to do that because you feel like Harold Perkins is best kind of as a stack backer and moving around. So if you had to do that quickly, if we start to see that more than we don't, then that's LSU showing you they have not yet found their guy to rush the passer.
So it's weird. So, again, if we're scoring concern levels, still feel great about LSU's O-line, don't feel great about the DBs, don't feel great about the pass rush. I hope somebody steps up, finding the interior, everything Jake just said. Number 4, LSU's special teams versus themselves. And that's because last year they were an abject disaster. It ends up costing you the game. And you put so much into getting better this offseason. I mean, you fired your hand of the king if you're Brian Kelly, a brother in arms, the first person who showed up with you here in Baton Rouge, the person who did more than any other from a time standpoint with you in the beginning to cobble together this roster out of nothing and get the transfers and everything else and all the roster management. You fired that dude. So look, you go out and you get Aaron Anderson, right? To try to solve. You've put so much into getting better here. You have to be better.
Without question, it was just the worst I've seen. LSU is so prideful in special teams and their championship runs, and you could go name by name by name. And T-Bob, you were in those meetings as well. The pride that you had in it, you got to get that back. You've got to get that juice back. It is a true phase of the game. You cannot preach that enough. And last year was not even close to good enough. There's a standard of special teams at LSU, and you got to get back. And it starts with buy-in from everybody on the team, right? It starts with personnel. No one outside of number 5, Jaden Daniels, number 4, Harold Perkins, and number 0, Mason Smith, and number 8, Malik Neighbors. Everybody else, you're available. Mm-hmm. Would y'all agree? Would y'all add a name to that?
I think you nailed it.
All right. Everybody else, I'm not saying you're going to be, but you might. You might be on teams. Obviously, the offensive lineman, you'll be only on field goal and extra point. Because that's what you need. You need willingness. You have to want to go down there, and you have to want to cover a kick. You want to block for your guy. And then you got to find the guy that's dangerous with the ball in his hands and not just fair catching. Yeah. Look, I mean, they can put me back there to fair catch. I'm not going to do anything dynamic after I catch it, okay? You have to have someone who makes coaches nervous. They have that now. So all those things have to show up, and they got to show up in this game because last year it cost you. It cost you certainly in this game. It didn't cost you maybe against Tennessee. That game got out of hand. But it got out of hand quick because you didn't handle the opening kickoff. and we could go a couple more games where special teams did you no favors. It's got to go up by like 10 notches.
Yeah. I agree. And therefore, that's why it ends up in our top 5 most important matchups for game day.
God, it might be number 2 for me. That's how mad it made me last year.
And then number 5 most important matchup of Sunday night's game against Florida State, Harold Perkins versus everyone. As I mean, we mentioned the offensive line. I think that'll be the most improved group. But in terms of a player avoiding Percules last year, like Florida State at the time had no idea how lucky they were. I mean, this is a guy who we saw straight up win you games later in the year. Why? What was one of the core reasons why Bryce Young didn't quite look like himself that game? Was Harold Perkins. I mean, we're talking about touchdown-saving plays, right? I mean, we all know how he basically won you the Arkansas game. He's almost responsible for 3 dubs as a defensive player, which is just unreal impact. That guy didn't even play. And so suddenly having to deal with him out of nowhere, somebody that they're calling, the 3rd best or 4th best player in college football on the ESPN list.
Gosh, I think it was 4th.
Yeah, I think it was 4th as well.
I think it was 4th. Yeah, because it went Caleb Williams, Drake May, Marvin Harrison Jr., Harold Perkins, right?
So there you go. Getting that guy, all of a sudden, when you look at the difference in last year, it's probably the biggest single difference. What I think for Perkins too, Jake, is I feel like, and this is probably not accurate because I think we just remember the bad beats more than the good ones. But I feel like there's been a streak at LSU where we've seen maybe a phenom burst onto the scene and the development kind of maybe not follow up with the hype the next year.
Completely fair.
And it's not that I need Harold Perkins to be way better, but I just need him not to be way better, but to be as good, right? If he's as good, that's good, right?
But you expect him to go up.
Yes, I would expect him to have, but he was so good last year. It's like, how much can you prove? We'll see. But I would be really disappointed if you see that step back, because to me, that's actually arguably what Brian Kelly is bringing to bear more than anything is he's so process-oriented that in theory, his process should avoid naturally, like the player getting the big head, maybe avoiding doing the things that got them there.
Yeah.
Like if anybody in this new system, the Kelly process should help the fall off that we've seen from some of these other phenoms recently.
And also, this is his first offseason in the weight room. Remember, he wasn't an early enrollee, so he was getting here in the summertime, had about 6 to 8 weeks to try to change his body, and then the season starts. Once the season starts, it's all about maintenance and maintaining what you built up. You're not gaining anything. Well, now he's been here for a off-season program. He's been here for a spring. He's been here for a true summer workout. So I'm looking forward to seeing how much his body has changed as well. Taking on blocks, taking on the run game portion of this as well, not just getting after the quarterback. Sure. And so it's even more amazing because the other freshmen that helped you last year, they were here in the spring. And so they had a 5-month head start on you. Well, now you have an all season. So I fully expect, as good as it was a year ago, it to be better and not by just a little bit. See, I think he's somebody that can improve in the run game. And now, if you're out there as an edge rusher, it's not just with speed because your body's changed. You can change it up, bull rush, strong arm, whatever you want to do. So, I mean, in my opinion, there's a lot of ways I can talk myself into it going up and not the other way. Like we have seen certainly in the past with other LSU stars that burst onto the scene and don't have that second season. Yeah, and again, I think that's where the value of Brian Kelly is, in that continued development. Will you see Jaden Daniels take that step forward? Will you see Harold Perkins take this forward? You saw the development within the year last year. Did they maintain the focus and carry it through the offseason? There's no excuse to not, right? I mean, nobody's arrived here. Nobody won a championship or anything. You had a good year one, but how could you not be motivated to go out there and be better? The standard at LSU is a championship standard. Bilbo says, I'm worried about Jared Verse. Jared Verse is a dog, but so are Emory Jones and Will Campbell. I'm not saying Jared Verse may not have a moment, but overall, I'm not worried about him ruining your day because I actually think that LSU's guys are up to that task. It's no disrespect on Verse. I just think you have very good NFL guys as well. Mills saying, I'd make the same argument on Malik Neighbors that T-Bob's making about Perkins right now. That's fair. A guy who, what were his stats coming out of last year's game? I thought you meant over.
No. I know he hit 1,000 yards, 70 catches. Awesome year overall. I'm wondering what it was like how much of a factor he played in last year's game. Because certainly we were all looking at Kayshon Boutte, and how could you not think back? Like,
I got it pulled up.
what if that's Malik Neighbors on that first ball?
All right,
that went through
I
the
got
hands,
you right here.
Right?
He had,
There's the whole game could have been different if Boutte had made a couple of those plays.
So Malik Neighbors last year, 5 catches for 42 yards.
Okay,
but
so he was already
he was the one that muffed the punts
Both.
Two.
in the Florida State game. Both of them, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And remember, you were forcing the football to Kayshon in that first game, and he still only had 2 catches for 20 yards. So the leading receiver was Jeray Jenkins, 5 for 46. Brian Thomas had 5 for 44. Malik had 5 for 42. So you spread the wealth, but you still forced the ball to Kayshon in that game. And this offense, to me, is going to be so much better in the fact, certainly to start the year, where you don't have that situation. You feel like it's going to happen because of your reads, and it's going to happen because of what they're giving you, and not, hey, we got to get 7 involved. We got to get 7 involved, because that's what it felt like to start the season, surely, in this game, maybe more than any other.
Yeah, and remember, by the end of that game, the offense was starting to click, but I'd love to see for some of those numbers to be a bit more chunky, like 5 for 46, 5 for 45, 40. I like spreading the ball around, but that's a little, what's the main improvement we want to see out of that pass game? More explosivity, maybe a little more willingness to test it deep. And then
remember in that game as well, that was before Josh Williams really broke out. He missed all of spring and all of fall. Now, he hadn't been super available this year as well, but he had 1 carry for 2 yards in that game.
I don't know. What do you make of the running back position, Jake? Like, who do you think is going to be the guy on Sunday? Not that there's going to be a guy, but like,
you're 8 deep. You got some injuries now, so you're not going to have all 8 available. If Josh Williams would have had a normal fall camp, I would have said Josh Williams. With what he did, go back to the Arkansas game, certainly the Alabama game, what he did with and without the ball. But with him missing so much time, I don't know that he's going to get the run that he would have.
Yeah.
And so I expect it to be Diggs and Kane and Emery and Williams. I think that's the 4 backs that I would count on. Now, Caleb Jackson, I don't know. It's just a true freshman in that situation.
They kick away
when you have a game like this, and we're talking pass protection, we're talking assignment, all that. Those 4 backs are the ones that I think are going to get featured.
Yeah,
and we're talking probably 10 carries, 7 carries, 5 carries, 3 carries.
What's crazy when you talk about that, like last year, Noah Kane had 7 carries for 23 yards.
Yeah.
He led the team as far as running backs. Daniels was 16 for 114, but combined you had 13 carries for 39 yards from your running backs last year. Because Kane, he came off of an injury at Penn State, and he enrolled in fall. So he wasn't accustomed to the offense either. He was better late in the season, a lot like a Josh Williams. Only 3 running backs got carries against Florida State last year. You're probably going to have, 4 to 5 this year?
Yeah.
And they're going to get significant carries. Kane had 7, Goodwin had 5, Williams had 1. That was it for your carries against Florida State as far as the running backs.
Also, you were playing from behind, too.
Yeah.
For so much of the game that you kind of had to abandon the running game. Wow, Jake, what incredible takes.
Those guys, they're just the best.
I think so. And if you think so, again, hit the like button, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications when we post every single day here on OTB LSU.